Welcome, everyone. My name is Antonio Lopez, joined by the amazing, incredible.
Robin Riebel.
That's right. And today, our goal is to talk about electrical basics and really increase your confidence. So, we're going to do this a few different ways. Really focus on three key areas with this topic. It really comes down to safety for you and anyone within your home. We're going to talk about that journey of electricity, how it goes from the source all the way to different receptacles within your home, and additional ways that protection is offered, for your appliances, electronics. Just really, again, an additional layer of safety, if you will.
Sure.
So let's start this off. And Robin, we're talking about safety. What are some really important elements to respect electricity, but also embrace this?
Right. First of all, you should always have a really healthy respect for electricity. Electricity is definitely our friend, but it can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing with it. So the first thing we really want to know is, where is everything? Especially our main electrical shutoff. That is so important. If anything happens, you're going to need to turn off that electricity quickly. You want to know where that main shutoff is. You don't want to wait until there is an emergency to try to find it. So it's a good idea to know where it is. A lot of times nowadays, you might even find it outside by your electrical meter, which we'll talk about in just a second. Other times you may find it inside in your breaker box, which we will also talk about in just a minute. Now, when you are working with electrical, you need to turn off the power at the breaker box. Now, when you do that, that's going to shut off an entire circuit, but you need to tell everybody in the house, hey, I'm working on, communication. I'm working on the electrical. Please don't turn anything back on. It's for their safety as well as your own safety. Another thing that you can do is, besides communicating to everybody, it's not a bad idea to put a Post-it note, put a little tape. Hey, I'm working on this. Don't turn that breaker back on, because it could be very dangerous.
I wish I would have done that when I was about 19. I was helping some relatives with a home renovation project, and we were scoring wallpaper on the wall in the room. I turned off the breaker, but then shortly after, somebody else turned it on. Fortunately, crisis was averted, but I did experience a little bit of shock.
Yes.
So I definitely gained a newfound respect and started taking on that approach.
Yeah, you definitely, it's called a lockout, and you want to make sure that you're letting everybody know, hey, I'm working on the electrical. Now, the thing with electrical is a lot of people do find it intimidating. So if at any point you are uncomfortable working with electrical or taking on this type of project, call a licensed professional, right? That's why they're there. You can go to your local Home Depot. They can recommend people to you, but always have an electrician available if you are not comfortable with
You
it.
know what? Great resource on homedepot.com. You can actually log in, look at our installation services, and we have more than just that. In fact, there's a section right here you can navigate through, find the electrical licensed professional section right there. It'll tap you into local pros that are licensed, bonded, and insured. And there's also some other really helpful, important information right here.
Sure.
Again, all at your fingertips on homedepot.com. Great resource to help our customers. And Robin, I think safety is so important. We're going to reiterate that throughout.
Absolutely.
But let's start now on that journey, overviewing the entire electrical system within your home. And what we're talking about is that journey that starts at the utility provider. So that's the source, and how it takes it throughout different parts of your home, how that's managed and distributed. That first stop, Robin, is the meter. So we're going from the utility provider to the meter, and this is measuring the amount of electricity that's being delivered to your home.
Right.
Average solar amount, I know it can vary depending on the age, but you're looking probably, 150, 200, 250 amps even?
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah.
Little range.
250 is a little high, but anywhere from 150 to 250 is a great average.
And you may see that measurement, it's going to be represented in amps. Again, just simply put, that's the measurement of electricity that's being provided for your home. But here's the good news. If you have any questions or any doubt, partner with that utility provider. Right? Give them a call. Go on their website. There's a ton of information and resources, and they will do a little quality control check if you do suspect anything is just weird or awry.
Right. If, all of a sudden your electricity bill goes up and you didn't get an increase in
What's going on?
your kilowatt hour, which is how they're going to charge you for it or whatever, they could provide audits for you. They can help you out. So they are a great resource. They're not just trying to get money to pay the bill.
That's right.
They can also be a great resource for you if you have any questions regarding that source.
All right, so Robin, take us to the next stop because now we're looking at that power being delivered and fed into the home.
Right. So you're taking all of that electricity, whatever it may be, the 150, 200, 250 amps, and it's all going to come in to your home and it's going to wind up in your main electric panel. The job of this panel is to then break up that electricity into usable packets and send it out through the rest of your house. That's exactly what your electric panel does. It's kind of, think of it as like the main control center
All right.
for all of that electricity coming into your house.
So it's distributing it everywhere. Now it's taking that, and if we focus in a little closer, that distribution system, there's a couple ways. I know, like growing up in New York City, pre-war New York City building, very old pre-war is the key here.
Yes.
So our electrical system was all based off fuses, with that panel or individual meters. Look, anytime the air conditioning and microwave was used in the summertime, boom. You had to go down in the basement, replace this screw-in Edison bolt type of fuse. But more common are circuit breakers. Robin, when we're looking at that panel, we see all these breakers. What are some really important, maybe elements to know with circuit breakers?
Sure. So circuit breakers, this is kind of the most common. This is what's called a single pole breaker, meaning it's just one single circuit that's controlled. And the number that you usually see on it, that's how many amps it's going to carry. So this particular one is a 20 amp breaker. And what this does is, let's just say this is going to go to a bedroom. This is going to provide all of the electricity for a bedroom, usually the lights and the outlets, and 20 amps is more than enough. Usually they're 15 amps. This is actually a little bit heavy for that. But if you're in that bedroom and you're trying to draw or use more than 20 amps of electricity, that will overload the circuit and it will cause that circuit to trip. All right. So that's what tripping means. Now, a lot of times you can see it. Some circuit breakers may have like a little red flag that comes up. Some may just trip to like a neutral position, which means it's not really on, it's not really off. And then you have to reset that. So that's what a tripping breaker is. It is basically a safety feature to make sure that you don't try to run too much electricity to one area of your home that can't handle it.
Overloading that circuit.
Now, you will have situations where there are certain things around your home, like maybe your air conditioner, your electric water heater, your electric range, that need more energy. 20 amps is not going to do it. And that's where we bring in what is called a double pole. Now, you'll see this is twice the size of the single, and it has a double switch, but they're kind of joined together. And this, you'll see the 20 on both sides. So actually there's a 15 on both sides. So this would be a 30 amp.
30 amps. So it's doubling whatever that single amount is.
Absolutely.
But again, more power is being provided based on the use.
Right. So all of your bigger appliances and systems in your home will have larger breakers because they have a bigger draw of power. All right. So that's kind of what that means. Now, mostly, like I said, your bedrooms, bathrooms, things like that, 15 amp breaker is more than enough to run anything you need. Your kitchen might be broken up into a couple of different circuits, like maybe one for the range, one for other small appliances, and then one for the lights. They may break it up a little bit more because a lot of those appliances will draw more power.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. Now, one thing you do need to know about breakers, first of all, they don't go bad very often. All right. The breaker itself is usually not the problem. It's usually something else within the circuit. So the breakers, these can easily last 10, 15, even 20 years. Okay.
Long shelf life.
Long shelf life on these. But if for some reason they do have to be replaced, you want to replace like for like. So we have a couple of different brands here. This one happens to be a Square D. This one happens to be a Siemens. If you have one type in your box, you want to replace it with the same brand type. And that's just because they may have slightly different connection points. They'll do the same thing. A 15 amp breaker is still a 15 amp breaker, but it may not fit into your box properly if your box is set up for Square D and you try to put a Siemens into it.
So like it's just the best practice is brand, the number, the type, the size, all kind of keep it equal. But again, I think this is one of those areas you're probably better off just partnering with a pro, just to give you that peace of mind.
Yeah, I would say definitely, generally, anything, any type of service or work or changing out anything inside the breaker box, other than just merely turning on and off the breakers, generally, I would keep that out of the realm of DIY unless you really know what you're doing. Anytime, even me personally, I grew up with an electrician, right? I'm very comfortable around electricity, but I won't do any work in the box itself, right? In the home, yes, but in the box, no.
All right, I'm going to call out there is an area that is DIY friendly. And that's making sure that the panel, the labeling, that's it's accurate, very easy to read. Even if you've been in the home for a long time, check it twice, make sure. In fact, there's a couple ways you can do this, and we want you to do this as a call to action. So go and do it a couple ways. One way is that old school method, right? You plug in some type of appliance or a radio, different parts of your home, and you trip that breaker to see, get that confirmation.
Right.
Or use the two-person system, you're yelling out back and forth, that's one way.
Yep, that's the old school, that's
Or
the low-tech method of doing it.
we're going to talk about this tool. This is one of many options you can go with. This is by Klein Tools. It's called a digital circuit breaker finder tool. 2 pieces, and we're going to show you how this can help check the accuracy or label it if there's nothing there. But just know it can do a lot more than just that simple task. So let's go and play this video and show you what this is all about. The digital circuit breaker finder locates the correct breaker in a panel to which an electrical outlet or fixture is connected. It consists of 2 parts, a receiver and transmitter, and the transmitter will plug into an outlet, such as one in the kitchen wall, while the receiver will scan the circuit breakers on your electrical panel to confirm a connection. Be sure to read the instructions, turn on the receiver, and scan through your entire panel. This is to calibrate it and learn your circuit breakers. Once you complete a full pass, you can run a second pass until you see and hear the visual and audio indicators or a confirmed connection. Right here, we've just verified a kitchen outlet confirmed circuit breaker. Let's try this in another outlet. For this example, we'll use the kitchen outlet on an island. Plug in the transmitter, scan through the panel again until you get the visual and audible confirmations. There you have it. We have a confirmed connection. So as you can see, this tool is really helpful. It can help you label. It makes it a more efficient, effective process. And again, we're going to show you other uses for this tool. So just sit tight and you'll see how this is just a really great,
It's a great tool.
great teammate.
Yeah, that's true. It is a great team there.
All right. So great way to use this tool. But Robin, I want to keep talking about something that you kept mentioning. And we mentioned it here, circuit breakers. Let's focus on circuits specifically. What is it? What's the definition? Walk us through that.
Sure. So a circuit, once that electricity comes in and it comes into your panel, it then gets distributed to the different areas of your house. And each area that it's being distributed to is a circuit. And what I really want you to think about when you think about a circuit is think about a car on a racetrack. All right. Those cars just keep going around and around and they always come back to the same spot. Well, the same thing happens with electricity. The electricity that goes out through that circuit has to come back. It has to be a complete circuit in order for it to work properly. So just keep thinking about cars on a racetrack. Now, the way that we make that circuit instead of a racetrack is with wire. And wire has meaning, okay? When you go in, you can't just pick any random wire. All of those things, if you get a package of wiring, standard wiring for inside your home is gonna look kind of like this, okay? Quite often it's called Romex. Romex is a brand name, so it doesn't have to be Romex, but you'll always see a size on it, and you'll see something like a 14-2 NM. And what that stands for is 14 gauge, 2 wires, non-metallic cable. And what that means is that the sheathing on the cable, right? When we talk about a cable, it's got different wires inside. A cable is a bundling of wires. That the sheathing on the outside of the cable is not metallic, right? It's just this plasticky product. Now, what does gauge mean? When we're talking about wire, gauge is the size or the thickness of the wire. Now, a little bit counterintuitive because the smaller the number, the thicker the wire. So, like you said, a 12 gauge wire is actually going to be thicker than a 14 gauge wire.
So it's that inverse relationship. I know that sometimes takes me time to wrap my head around it.
Kind of
But
process
lower the number, thicker the wire.
Right. So now your average in most of your homes, you're going to be dealing mostly with 14 gauge wire. That's pretty common. Now there are some heavy duty things like we were talking about earlier, an electric range, things like that, that may require more of an electricity pull. So they will have a thicker gauge wire. They might be wired with a 12 or even a 10 gauge wire. But most of the wiring in your house, especially when you're talking about switches and outlets, going to be 14 gauge. Now, I said 14-2. And if I look at this piece of wire, this is a piece of 14-2 wire.
But there's 3 wires there, Robin.
There's 3 wires there.
Got 2 that are colored, coded differently.
Right. And that's exactly it. When we're talking about the wiring, we're talking about the ones that are colored. You'll see I have a black, I have a bare, and I have a white. Now, these wires actually mean something. These colors mean something. In the United States, your black wire is what is considered your hot wire. That's the one that's going to send the electricity out through the circuit, right? Then it is going to come back in your neutral wire. This is what's going to carry it back. This bare one, and it's often in a cable like this, it's often bare. It might be green, but what I want you to remember, green is ground. This is your ground wire. It doesn't count because it's not designed to carry electricity all the time. It is a safety feature, right? So again, we're using our race car analogy. What happens if a car spins out on the track?
Some disruption.
Something happens, it needs another place to go. And what it does, if something happens with your electrical, you want to send it someplace safely.
Right.
And safely is sending it to ground, which is why we have a ground wire. Okay? So that's what that means. So these colors mean something. The number 14 means something. That's the thickness of the wire. But this is kind of the most common wire that you're going to see inside your home if you're dealing especially with switches or outlets or light fixtures or anything like that, ceiling fans.
Yeah.
All right?
That's a good segue because that's a simple way to understand it.
Mhm.
When I'm thinking about this journey, I'm getting a little caught up because I heard about, it's traveling in a circle, but then it's going in one wire and another. And so let's focus a little bit on this journey of a circuit. If I'm traveling and I'm going to a light switch,
Mhm.
how does that play as a factor, especially when you think about that racetrack example?
Sure. So let's stick with driving, right? So let's say we're doing a racetrack, but we're doing a race through a city, right? And we come to a drawbridge, right? When the drawbridge is down, the cars can just keep going, right? Both directions.
All right. Yeah, it's
Right.
open and free.
It's right. It's open both ways, right? So if the drawbridge is down, you don't have a problem. What happens if that drawbridge is up?
Well, it's stopping. It's causing an interruption.
It's causing an interruption. Well, that's exactly what a switch is. A switch causes an interruption in the hot side. So if you look at your standard switch, this is just a standard switch. You'll notice it's got two screws on it, but these screws are the same color. Again, color has meaning in electrical. You see, these are gold or brass colored. These will only get connected to hot wires. So switches are only running on the hot side, and all this is doing is acting like a drawbridge. If it is on, it means that it's freely letting electricity go. If it is off, it's stopping that flow of electricity.
So when we look at this example that's on the screen, this diagram, I've got this switch up. I'm allowing that pathway to transfer the power to that light fixture,
Mm-hmm.
lighting up that room, that area. And if I flip it down, I'm stopping traffic. I'm raising the drawbridge, and then it's sending electricity back kind of in that circuit, but not going to that.
Right. It's not completing that circuit,
Got it.
and so that just kind of hangs out. So until it can run all the way through. So that's all a switch does. That's all.
All right, so we're shifting gears here. So now that the journey, instead of going to that light switch or that light fixture, we want to go to that receptacle. So what does that look like? What's important to know here?
Sure. So sometimes the electricity is not going to go through a switch, it's going to go straight through a receptacle. Now, again, this is a standard, what we call a duplex receptacle, just meaning you can plug two things into it. That's all it is. All right. So this is your standard receptacle. And again, this has screws on it. So you'll see on this side, it has gold screws, right? Or brass colored screws. Just like on the switch, this is the hot side, right? So this is going to allow electricity to come in through this outlet. But on the other side, you'll see I have silver screws, right? Silver connection points. And silver is neutral. So your power is going to come in through the gold side. It's going to power whatever you have plugged into here. And then it's going to go back to complete the circuit through the neutral side. Okay?
I'm sticking with you.
All right, it's still a complete circle, in through the hot side, out through the neutral side. Okay, so that's your receptacle. Now, the beautiful thing about receptacles is, you see, I've got a way to come in and out at the top, and I've got a way to come in and out at the bottom. Right. The beautiful thing about receptacles is receptacles can be run in succession. So I can bring my power into this top one here, then I can bring power out of this bottom one and run over to another outlet. And then I can run over to another outlet. This is how we keep all of the outlets in one room on the same circuit. They're just daisy chained together.
Okay, so that's how we can, like, going back to the electrical panel, that's why we're able to control one area of a room or another part of the house on that one circuit,
Right.
because of how it's all wired and tied in together.
How it's all wired and tied in together.
All right, that was a great amount of information.
Yeah.
So we'll take a pause here because we've had some great questions come in about electrical.
Sure.
In fact, so I want to highlight just a couple customer questions. One that we've gotten, we'll do, this one is actually a really great one. And it's talking about customer sees there's empty slots in the receptacle or in the electrical panel.
Right.
And they want to add something there. Maybe they're a buyer for an electric car. They want that electrical car charger. So talk to us about that customer situation, what to do.
Okay, just because there are open slots inside your panel doesn't mean that you can add additional circuits in there, okay? Your house was originally wired. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not space to add in there, but usually they put in the size panel that you need, right? So they are not considering things like chargers for electric cars or electric water, tankless water heaters, right? If you have a tank storage water heater, that's fine, but a tankless electric water heater requires a great deal of electricity.
Yeah.
All right. So you can't just add another circuit. This is where you definitely need to call in a professional, have it evaluated to see if you have enough power in your box to add that circuit, or if you have to add what they call a pony panel or a sub panel, where you may have to add a whole new little mini panel to bring in that extra electricity.
Right. Great takeaways here. So just to kind of circle back, we mentioned this partnering with a pro, really important, and you kind of provided some ways to do that. But overall, the circuit breaker itself, the circuit panel, we're talking about if somebody still wants to take it on as a DIY, what are we? We're saying this is an intermediate. This is an advanced.
This is
Don't touch it. So so try not to touch it.
Right. I do not, like I said at the beginning, I don't ever recommend anyone really messing with their panel because, again, just to add another circuit in there, you don't know if you have enough. You're already breaking up that
There's
electricity.
too many
Right.
variables.
There's way too many variables.
Especially if you have an older home, then you start just making it more complex. So it's a good. We're clear. So I think it's clear we can keep moving on.
Right.
On this topic of safety that we talked about in the beginning, let's branch it up because we're talking about protection. And I want to discuss this because protection comes in many forms within your home. And it's really about what are the proactive ways to protect your home, to protect anyone within the house.
Right.
And what we see here are, you talked about outlets. And on the left, we've got an image of a basic modern receptacle, right? It has 3 prongs, 2 to complete that circuit like Robin talked about, and 1 for the ground. All right, so this relies on the circuit breaker, that panel, to switch off the circuit if something is overloaded and trips. To the right, let's show this GFCI outlet. And you may recognize this. It stands for ground fault circuit interrupter. You may see this in your bathroom, your kitchen, outside of your home, in a garage. And they're built in with protectors, kind of a built-in surge protector that trips when it senses some type of irregular operation. Most commonly known is typically water intrusion is like the most relevant example. That's why you see it in kitchens and bathrooms. And this is just to kind of protect the homeowner.
Right. It's that electricity, like we said earlier, electricity likes to take the path of least resistance, right? It wants to go wherever is easiest to drive.
Water.
Why am I gonna drive on a bumpy, twisty, turny road when I have a straight 4-lane superhighway? I'd rather take the superhighway. Well, moisture is a path of least resistance, all right? It's gonna make
electricity quicker and
right.
faster. It's not good.
Exactly. So this is if for some reason, and that's why they call it a ground fault interrupter, circuit interrupter, if the ground is not working properly, right, then it's going to go ahead and trip.
Yeah, this is quicker. This is like the first responder.
Absolutely.
Well,
Like this is like milliseconds.
Robin, there's another acronym there that we see. It's very common. It's a little newer than GFCI. It's AFCI, and it's that arc fault circuit interrupter. And just to shed some light on that for you, for everyone out there, this is arc fault circuit interrupter. Similar protection in that it's protecting you, but it's more about preventing fires. So the best example I can tell you, this is a born and raised New Yorker. A lot of rodents, a lot of rats on the track. You probably see the rats climbing the stairs in the subway, eating some pizza. There was some pizza right now. But if you have maybe a rat problem and they're chewing on wires behind the walls, you can't see that. And that is a potential where an arc can occur, cause that fire. So an AFCI it's designed to help prevent that, to detect it and shut it off.
Yeah, and that's also a big thing. And a lot of times, people are like, oh, I have new construction. I don't have a problem with that, right?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times what happens is, especially if you're in a subdivision or an apartment building where they were building things very, very quickly, a lot of your outlets may be connected with a push to connect, right? Instead of actually wrapping the wire around a screw.
Now we're getting to a whole another ball game, bro.
Well, that can come loose. And when we do that with a push to connect, when it comes loose, that can cause a spark because it's connected, but not really connected. Yep. So, that's another.
So just to clarify here for the folks that aren't familiar with what you're talking about, push to connects, we're talking about wire connectors, wire nuts, and they come in many different shapes and forms. Is just another opportunity where things like that can happen.
Right.
But again, just good information to know so you can make the best decision.
Absolutely.
To protect yourself and your home. And Robin, familia. You know what? I want to take care of our family out here too. Let's talk about this tool again. Let's bring it back. All right, because the tool that we talked about, look, just don't rely on trusting that your home, everything is okay, because maybe something's not. So testing is a best practice.
Right.
We're going to bring back this tool. Although it's called a digital circuit breaker finder tool, it does more than just that. It also tests. It can test for that GFCI protection, in fact. Two-part tool. So this is a transmitter. So if I wanted to go and inspect let's say a bathroom, and I've got my GFCI, I can plug it in, and there's a test and reset button on the tool itself. So that's one way to check that GFCI outlet as well. You can also check another outlet in that bathroom. Maybe you see a normal, traditional, standard 3-prong outlet, and you're like, oh, I don't have all this protection that Antonio and Robin are talking about. Use this tool. This can confirm it and check it, because that outlet may be tied and wired into that GFCI outlet.
Right.
So this is just another way to give you that confirmation and peace of mind.
This is also a great way, especially if you're in an older home and you're not sure if your outlets are grounded.
Yep.
Now, one real easy way to find out if your outlets are grounded, if you have a 2-prong outlet, it doesn't have this little third hole in it, it's not grounded. But just because you have the third hole doesn't mean the outlet is grounded. All of your outlets have a grounding screw on them for that ground wire. If I don't connect a ground wire to that screw, this outlet will still work.
Right.
It's just not properly grounded.
You're not getting that safety, that protection.
Right. You're not getting that protection. So, but this can tell you if that outlet is grounded. Just by plugging it in, it'll let you know.
Yeah. And you'll see that it has a little reference chart on the bottom. We've got the photo on display too, where it'll show you the light indicators. So if you're following Robin's instructions and you see you've got an open ground, you may want to partner with a pro.
Absolutely.
Possibly. Great call out. What year was it when grounding was? It was
That was
21.
The mid 70s, 70, 74.
So for you folks that have older homes, this might be one of those things that you may find helpful. It can also, and I learned this from Robin, this is a great way to learn if your outlets are properly wired and they're not reversed. Well, you talked about, where was it? Reversing the hot with the neutral.
Yeah, if these are reversed, because remember, this is always the hot, this is the neutral. Now, you don't know who did electrical work in your house before you. What if they didn't realize and they swapped them? They didn't realize what those colors meant, right?
On that outlet, like you talked about.
On that
brass
outlet.
versus the gold.
Exactly. So this will actually tell you if those are swapped. And it can tell you a bunch of other things as well, right? It can tell you open hots and hot on neutrals and all of these things.
Or let's keep it positive. It can tell you everything is okay, that it's correctly wired. So you have that confirmation and that affirmation to give you that peace of mind.
Absolutely.
All right. We told them that this tool has a lot of uses. Look into it, might be helpful.
Especially if you find electricity intimidating. This right here could just give you the peace of mind that everything is wired correctly in your home.
That's right. All right, let's keep going on with the topic of protection. And we've got another really commonly used device, if you will. That's surge protectors. I've seen this all the time in New York City. Got a lot of different forms, shapes. All right, simply put, plug-in surge protectors gives you more outlets in a room, right? So if you have more electronics you want to plug in, you've got that, but it's designed to protect those electronics. So absolutely use it for like a television or your laptop, gaming system, cell phone charger, great. But they're not designed to plug in a refrigerator or, what was the tool, the appliance you talked about, common in the Northeast? Was it
Oh, the space heater. Space heater, yes. A portable space heater. Whew.
Do not do that. It doesn't go into that.
Yeah, they draw a lot of energy.
Yeah, so it just defeats the purpose, and it can actually cause a hazard. So always read the labels. It'll tell you what's okay to plug into these to give you that actual peace of mind. But let's take it a step further. These, because they offer protection, they do expire.
They do.
So they're not going to protect your equipment forever. How long these are going to work for will vary. And what I'll say is, if you've got a surge protector that's a few years old, chances are it is no longer offering surge protection. So replace it. When you're replacing it, look on the packaging of any future surge protector. Look for the joules. Joules is the indicator that determines how much surge protection it can withstand. Rule of thumb is the higher the joules, Joules, the more surge protection it can withstand and go through. So that's the first kind of little tip to replace and what to look for. You also do not want to add or plug in surge protector into another surge protector.
Right. That's important.
The chain that we talked about.
Yeah, because a lot of people are like, well, hey, if this is going to protect my electronics, if I plug it into another surge protector, it's going to double the protection.
So I'm not doing this.
Do not do that.
Not do that.
Now, the other addition to this is these provide more outlets, but they don't provide more electricity.
Okay.
Right? So you still only have that circuit still only has 15 or 20 amps to it. So if you try to overload that, it's going to trip the breaker, whether it's in the surge protector or not. This is not adding any more electricity to that circuit.
Great thing.
It's just protecting the equipment.
And then you see that all the time, especially in more city areas. Small apartment EXT,
older buildings as well, because at the very beginning we didn't have a lot of electronics, so we didn't have outlets everywhere. Right now we have to have outlets and USB chargers, USB-C chargers everywhere.
I'm guilty of it.
I know, right?
So now we talked about the surge protectors and not to plug in appliances, but one consideration you may want to do is there are whole house surge protectors. This might be a worthwhile investment. Just to keep it simple, look into this as a possible option. If you do, highly recommend getting an electrician to install it. Don't
Again,
just
works off the box.
Works off that box.
Right.
That panel. So
it's going from the panel.
But the value that this provides is it can protect those high ticket appliances throughout your home. So if worse comes to worse, something happens, you're not looking at thousands and thousands of dollars to replace your appliances. I've known firsthand when I was living in Washington, there was a pretty bad storm that downed a power line, and it caused a domino effect where a homeowner had to replace over $10,000 worth of appliances throughout their house.
Because even our appliances, even if they're not technically considered smart appliances, many of our appliances still have computers in them.
Absolutely.
They have some sort of computer chip to keep them regulated, and those sensitive electronics, cell phones, computers, anything with a computer chip in it, they don't like power surges.
They have feelings.
They do. They have feelings. They get very upset if they go through a power surge. So yeah, that's the fastest way to blow one of those.
So that's what we learned. Protect your electronics feelings and your appliances feelings.
Exactly. Protect your electronics, people.
All right. This might seem a little bit off course, but we're going to talk about the last section for protection. And it's about really best practice when you use, I know you're out there, y'all using extension cords, especially in the outside.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. Use the right extension cord for the right situation.
Right.
So the first thing I want to focus is the rating. Outdoor versus indoor rating.
Super important.
Got to make sure that's true. If I'm using this inside, you can use an outdoor inside, but you can't use one that's rated indoors outside.
Right. It's not going to hold up to the moisture.
So make sure that you're having the right rating for that. Right. Let's take it a step further, bringing it full circle back. Gauge, you talked about gauge.
Right.
Does that same rule of thumb apply when we're looking at extension cords?
Absolutely. If you're going to use heavier equipment outside, like a lot of your outdoor equipment, maybe an electric lawnmower or a power washer, something that's going to draw a lot of pellet smoker. Pellet smoker is going to draw a lot of electricity. You need to have a heavier gauge wire, a heavier gauge extension cord.
Call that out right there. So look for that label, 14 gauge. So a 12 gauge would be thicker.
12 gauge would be thicker. Yeah.
So that
would carry more.
A little better. All right. So we've got the gauge call out again. Talked about those tools. Another really important area when we're using these, especially outside, length matters. Robin mentioned that anytime there's an obstacle or essentially resistance, that's not good for electricity. That's going to cause some other issues. So use the right length. The longer the length, the more resistance can occur.
Yes.
So, and I remember I came across this when I was looking at buying either a battery-powered lawnmower or an electric connected lawnmower. Well, there was a limitation with electric connected lawnmowers. I can only use up to 50-foot length cord.
Extension cord.
Yeah. So didn't work for my case, so I went with battery powered. But it's really important. Length just matters.
It does, because then again, the biggest thing with that resistance causes heat. Heat is not necessarily your friend when you're talking about electricity.
It's a hazard.
It's
a hazard. So make sure you read the instructions of any equipment that you're connecting the right length, the right gauge, and have that right rating.
Right. And don't don't over connect
There you
to your extension cords. Mhm.
Whew, all right, let's tackle a couple other questions we've had from customers about some of the topics we talked about here. The first one I want to ask or talk about is we had a customer to ask us, what if their home isn't grounded?
Mhm.
What are the options?
Okay.
Do we have to get that corrected?
So it is now remember, grounding is an extra safety feature. Electricity takes that path of least resistance. And if it's not grounded properly, that path of least resistance could mean a shock, could mean an arc or a spark or a fire hazard. So it is a layer of protection. You definitely, if your house is not grounded, you definitely want to have it inspected by a professional.
Right.
Depending on your situation, it could mean a rewire. It could mean replacing your actual breakers. So they have what they call GFCI or ground fault circuit interrupter or AFCI
At the breaker.
at the breaker itself. That might be another step for you if you have breakers. If you are old school and still have fuses, some of us do. Right? If you still have fuses, then they may be able to ground everything back to a single grounding wire. But that is definitely something that needs to be evaluated by a professional. And that is definitely work that should be done by a professional as well.
Great call out. And that's a really great question that we would get consistently. Another customer had asked, they wrote to us and they asked about GFCI outlets. They wanted to add one or change one out.
Sure.
Is this something, when we're looking at it as a DIY, would you recommend it? What level of complexity is this
Right.
on as a homeowner?
I would say this is maybe an intermediate,
Middle.
advanced beginner. Oh, a lower intermediate. Okay. So I know it's confusing. These are a little bit different. Changing out a regular standard duplex outlet, absolutely
straightforward.
100% beginner project. This is a little more complicated because you need to know a little bit more about your wiring. It is something you can definitely do if you are at all comfortable with electricity. You can do this. You just need a couple of steps. We do have a fantastic workshop on replacing switches and outlets that goes into more detail
Yep.
on how to replace a GFCI or install a GFCI. So you may want to check that out first and see if that's something that you're comfortable with. But yeah, I would say maybe an intermediate project, a little bit more advanced than your basic, duplex outlet.
Straightforward. Check out that workshop.
Great workshop.
Let's go ahead now and just kind of recap. When we looked at all this information we discussed, we hope that you gained a little more confidence with this
Right.
little scary aspect of your home when it comes to safety, that journey of electricity from source to receptacle, and overall the ways that you're just getting protection
Right.
within your home.
Personal protection and, device protection.
Electronics,
Mm-hmm.
appliances, you name it. So the call to action is now, make sure that you downloaded the resource guide.
Mhm.
All right, you can rewatch this workshop, but also we want to let you know, if you have any question, you can always email us. Our email inbox is workshopslive@homedepot.com.
Yep.
We love answering those questions like the ones that we just kind of covered in today's workshop.
Right. We get questions all the time.
Whew, Robin, I got to thank you. I always love working with you, and you have a tremendous in-depth knowledge with a pretty intimidating aspect of being a homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to thank all of our customers out there.
I think so.
Y'all are great. We appreciate y'all. So on behalf of Home Depot, I want to say thank you. Muchísimas gracias. And come check us out soon for another workshop. Take care, y'all.
Thank you, everybody.